Greetings, dear students. Today we will discuss on the nature and concept of print media. Print media is one of the oldest form of mass communication. It includes newspapers, magazines, journals, etc. The basic understanding of print media is important for mass communication students. The contribution of print media in providing information and transfer the knowledge is remarkable. Even after emerge of electronic media, the print media has not lost its charm or relevance. Today we will discuss on the definition of print media, history, first newspaper in India and world, and also types of newspapers, writing style, difference between electronic media and print media. Today we have in our studio Professor K. Stevenson, retired professor, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication from the Osmania University. Sir, welcome sir. Please explain the definitions, the concept of the print media for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil. As you have rightly pointed out, print media is one of the oldest forms of mass communication, which means that this mass, the word mass, indicates that it is widely circulated. Generally, when we refer to print media, we refer to newspapers, daily newspapers, but it also includes magazines, journals, and other forms which I will discuss later. Newspapers collect information on a day-to-day basis. They give a lot of analysis, perspective, and informs the reader of what is happening in and around them. Today we will look at a brief history of print media. Before newspapers came into existence, all text was written on palm leaves, and this was pioneered by the Chinese in 600 AD. Today, even the Buddhist scriptures are preserved in the Chinese museums. One of the major landmarks with regard to newspapers is the invention of the printing press in 1439 by Johannes Gutenberg. The first newspaper in India was Kannada Samachar, but the first modern newspaper in English was Bengal Gazette in 1780 by James Augustus Hickey. It was also called as the General Advertiser.
Sir, can you explain the categories, means the types of newspaper in print media?
Right. Now, every day morning we receive newspapers in our houses, which is generally bigger in size, which is called as a broadsheet. Broadsheet, which is a large format, and it is serious journalism, which is practiced there. Now, in addition to the broadsheet, some newspapers also published a small size paper which is called as a tabloid. Tabloids are smaller in size they give entertainment focused news. Now the tabloids are more popular in the UK. Then there is a third category of newspapers which is called as the Berliners, which are mid-sized newspapers in between the large and the smaller formats of newspapers. I would suggest that students should look at some of these broadsheets, tabloids and also Berliners, which whose example is the Mint.
Will you explain some examples for each category, like a broadsheet, tabloid and Berliner?
Right. If you take English newspapers, say for example Deccan Chronicle, you have a broadsheet which is a larger format. Okay. In addition to this large format, you also have Hyderabad Chronicle, which is a tabloid size. Okay. Same with some Telugu newspapers, which have a larger newspaper, and accompanying this you have a smaller version which is the tabloid. There is a difference in the nature of contents which appear in the broadsheet and tabloids. And the third category of newspapers which I mentioned, which are very rare in India, which is a Berliner size, is of mid size between larger and smaller newspapers. For example, you can take Mint,
Mint,
which is a business newspaper.
After emerged the electronic media, there is still we have a lot of scope for the print media. Please explain the difference between the electronic media and print media.
A very nice question. Now, print media has its own advantages, but first we look at what are the basic distinctions between print and electronic media. Print media requires literacy. You need to understand language, you need to understand letters, you need to understand words so that you can actually read. But electronic media does not require literacy. You can just watch a program and you can listen to the program and understand what the anchor is saying. The second major difference is print media has deadlines. Okay, every day the newspaper has to come out early in the morning. Okay, but within the newspaper organization, there are deadlines for reporters, there are deadlines for sub-editors, there are deadlines for printing and circulation. But in the case of electronic media, there is nothing like a deadline. You have to constantly keep updating information. Okay, there is nothing like a deadline. Every minute, every second, you have to update. The third is the print media allows a lot of in-depth analysis, okay, which is not possible in the case of electronic media. Electronic media, it provides you instant updates. Okay, you flash messages and the messages are gone. Whereas print media, you can go write in-depth articles and be more informative and analytical in nature. Now, another advantage in the print media is where a reader can go back to the newspaper again and again in the day. But in electronic media, once news is flashed, well, that is gone unless you have an update after 1 hour or 2 hours. Okay? Print media has permanent records. Okay? What is written in print media, it becomes history. It is there. Okay? Today, many newspapers archive a lot of their daily editions. Okay? Electronic media, the messages are temporary, fleeting. Okay? Though they may be archived, it is there in a flash and after that it is gone. These are the basic differences between print and electronic media.
Yeah, well explained about the differences between print media and electronic media, sir. Now it's time to know about the advantages of print media. Please explain the advantages of print media to our students.
Yeah. Print media has its own advantages. Say, for example, when you get the newspaper in the morning, you can touch it, what is called as a tactile power. Tactile power. You can hold it in your hands, and there are news items and there are visuals which appeal to the learners. This is one major advantage. Okay. Then this newspaper which is circulated among millions and millions of people, the advertisement reach is far more effective than the digital ads, which may not be reaching out to many people. You can command a larger, loyal readership base in the case of print media as opposed to electronic and digital media. In the case of newspapers, you have flexible advertising options, in the sense you can have a full page advertisement, half page, quarter page. Okay, you have classifieds, you have display. Okay, so you can position it wherever you want, depending on how much you want to spend on each of these advertisements. I mean, this is also in the case of magazines. Okay, you can have advertisements which are center spreads. It can be black and white, it can be full color, it can be bleeds. Okay, there again you have smaller advertisements which run into 10 by 10 or 20 by 10. So you have so many different flexible options in the case of print media, which is not possible in the case of electronic media. In electronic media, you have 10-second slots or 30-second slots. Okay, depending on the advertiser as to how much he wants to spend. Okay. Print media is still trusted today. Okay. Why? Because of the constant fact checking and verification which goes on in a newspaper office. Reporters' copies are double checked for accuracy and truthfulness. So people still believe that print media is far more credible as opposed to other forms of media.
So far you have explained about the advantages of print media. The same time there is also a disadvantages. You know, in every media we have disadvantages and advantages. Sir, what are the disadvantages of print media? Please explain us.
Literacy sometimes becomes a limitation. Okay, when people are not educated, okay, they cannot read the newspapers. Another thing is, your newspapers can be national newspapers, regional newspapers, or local newspapers. Having a global reach is something which is very difficult for any newspaper. Okay, whether it is Japanese newspapers or US newspapers, they cannot command what we call as a global reach. Only these days what is happening is their e-versions, okay, are being circulated across the globe, but otherwise the print media reach is limited, the global reach is limited. Okay, then print media collects a lot of information, collects data, edits data. It requires a lot of planning. Okay, planning stories for the day, planning pages for the day, planning pictures for the day. Okay, and planning your entire production schedule. So it requires extensive planning. This is something which we will have to keep in mind. Also, if we have to reach out to specific audiences, it is very difficult. Say, for example, if you want to reach out to people who are interested in photography, you may not be able to reach out to this particular segment of population which is interested in photography, because your audience is very general in nature. Okay, then the cost of bringing out newspapers is very, very high, but the cost is offset because of the advertising revenue which is generated by the advertising department. Sometimes what happens is advertisements may get overlooked when there is too much of content. People tend to ignore the advertisements which are printed in the newspapers. These are some of the disadvantages.
Well said, sir, about advantages and disadvantages. Now coming to the challenges in the print media. What are the challenges facing in print media?
If you look at media history, print media dominated. Later we saw the advent of radio, then came television. Now we have internet. So these advancements in technology have definitely posed certain challenges to print media. One of the major challenges is a decline in readership. Okay, people have switched over from reading newspapers to reading news on their gadgets. Okay, whether it is a mobile or a tab or their laptops. So there is a decline in readership. Also, there is a decline in the advertisement revenue, which is a major mainstay of print media, because the ad revenue is now being shifted to digital media. The second point is the rising operational costs. The investment into starting a newspaper is very high. It involves not just physical assets but also machinery. Okay, the cost of newsprint, the cost of manpower, recurring and non-recurring costs, I think these are constantly increasing, which is a major challenge to print media. The third point is people's tastes and preferences for news is changing. They probably no longer prefer a newspaper. Instead of a newspaper, they think of some other news delivery platform which is available in their palm. So these changing preferences have also affected print media. Just like, for instance, there is intense competition from digital media faced by newspapers, which we have to take into consideration. Then there are environmental concerns. What are these environmental concerns? If we have to produce newsprint, we have to chop off, or we have to do some massive deforestation to actually generate newsprint. That's why today the newspaper industry is looking for alternatives to production of newsprint through a product called as cane-off. Okay, so this deforestation has its own environmental impact. So this is another major challenge faced by print media, and because of the stiff competition faced by print media, because of digital media, because of so many news platforms, print media has to respond by way of innovation. They have to think of new ways of presentation and diversify and capture their audiences. I think these are some of the challenges which the print media faces today.
Sir, please explain about the evolution of print media in the form of handwritten manuscript to today we have looking the printed version of books, newspapers. Please explain in detail about this evolution.
As I mentioned in the beginning, okay, initially we were writing on palm leaves, okay, handwritten manuscripts, okay, and Chinese later discovered that they start to print using writing blocks. Then we saw the invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg, and it led to a rise in newspapers, magazines and periodicals. Now, as technology advanced, okay, as industrialization took place, we were led to a situation where there was mass printing and mass distribution. We came across machines which could print, okay, hundreds of copies in a few hours. So this was the slow evolution. Further, what happened is, we moved from this hot metal type. Earlier during industrialization, we had this hot metal where type used to be cast and letters used to be placed on galleys and printed. From hot metal, we moved to from hot type to cold type, okay, where we started using computers, okay, which was another major technological advancement. Okay, it improved the printing quality. computers actually change the way newsrooms function. There are several pre-press activities like composing, proofreading, etc., etc. They were all done on computers. Earlier, each of these tasks was done by separate departments. So, and then advancements in printing machinery also. We moved from linotype to offset, okay, which was again a major jump. Okay. Now we have digital printing and online versions of newspapers. Okay. Some people are satisfied by just reading online versions of newspapers as opposed to again going back and reading the larger format of a newspaper.
It's a time to know about the impact of print media, sir, on the society.
Print media, when we look at again history, I think has had a major impact. It has created awareness about socio political and economic issues. Mahatma Gandhi used his newspapers to spread his message of freedom, non-violence. So, spreading awareness and educating masses, I think, has been one of the major contributions of print media. Then, print media strengthens democracy by informing citizens. If a democracy has to function, okay, if people have to elect their representatives, they have to be well informed. They should be told about the government's policies and programs. They should also be told about what are the drawbacks of the government, where the government is failing. So, citizens take decisions when it comes to elections, when they want to elect their leaders, whether they want to have a particular political party which is going to serve them or not, they should be well informed. So, an informed citizenry is something which is basic for the functioning of a democracy, and this function is very beautifully executed by the print media. Okay. It also has an impact on public opinion and policy making. When people are informed about certain issues, say for example, if there is corruption, people say, okay, there is corruption, the benefits which an ordinary citizen is supposed to receive, okay, are not actually being given to them, then the public opinion may turn against the government. Similarly, when you have lawmakers who go and articulate certain viewpoints in the parliament or in the legislative assembly, they are actually helping in policy making. Now, these lawmakers do not just go and talk like that. They read a lot about what is happening in the society, what are the expectations of people. Okay? They read newspapers and they say, okay, I think this is a policy which is not going to help. Let us say there is one company which is being set up and it is likely to pollute. Okay? So, there is some kind of a protest, and this protest is taken cognizance by lawmakers. Okay? Then we have these lawmakers going and representing the issues of people in the lawmaking bodies. So, it influences public opinion and also helps in policy making. It has press is what we refer to as, we are recording history. Okay. Today, when we write something, it becomes history tomorrow. So, all material which is generated in newspapers, they become a part of history, and tomorrow we can learn lessons from this history which is already recorded in newspapers. It promotes literacy and cultural exchange. It promotes literacy. Okay, people educate themselves, okay, on different aspects, not just government programs, but also about certain financial information which they need. So it promotes certain kind of literacy, educates them, and also promotes what we call as cultural exchange. When I read newspapers, I know what is the culture of people living in Jammu and Kashmir. I learn a lot about culture of people living in the Northeast. So in this way, I think print media definitely has made an impact on the society.
Sir, connection to the impact of print media on society. Now we know the digital media is very much expanded. So can you explain the differences between the print media and the digital media?
Yeah. A print media, as I said, is tangible. Tangible is something which can be touched. It is permanent. Okay, if I go to Times of India newspaper and I look into their library, I can just go back and say what happened in, let us say, 2002. It is there, permanently there. But even these newspapers are now digitizing their own versions. So whereas digital media is far more dynamic. Dynamic in the sense the contents of digital media are constantly changing. Okay, if you are watching your own website or you are watching any social media platform, the media content is changing by the second. Okay, instant updates. Okay, whereas in the case of print media, you can get in-depth information, whereas here it is just an instant update and then you move on to some other subject. Print media, as I said, is far more credible. Okay, today digital media faces a lot of challenges with regard to misinformation and disinformation. Why? Because in digital media there is this emphasis on speed. Okay, how fast are you, or whether you are the first to give news or not. Now in that context, digital media is running a race. So naturally they are bound to commit mistakes. Why? Because you don't have any gatekeepers, you don't have people to check the nature of content, whereas print media has a lot of credibility. Digital media can reach out to a global audience. Okay, something happening locally, okay, in a particular village can actually become a global news. Okay, whereas print is localized. The cost of print is high, whereas digital media it is low, and it is easier, it is cheaper to distribute.
So far we have discussed the nature and concept of print media. Sir, please summarize the future of print media. Print media, please summarize in this conclusion of this video lesson with the future of print media.
Print media will survive in spite of the challenges posed by the digital media. I mentioned a couple of minutes back that no one medium has replaced another medium. Each medium which came as a new form was only supplementing or adding to what the earlier media has actually been doing. So the print media future lies in how well it can adapt itself, how well it can integrate the digital component. That's why today we have what we see as hybrid models, print and online editions. Okay, then in case of magazines you have augmented reality. Okay, you have print products which are categorically reaching out to specific groups and gaining popularity. This is one area where they can improve upon, and there are sustainable practices which they have to adopt to meet the environmental concerns.
Thank you very much for this video lesson, sir.